gathered near the open area, holding phones and cameras, whispering with excitement. Many had waited a long time to see the royal guards up close. For them, this moment felt special, almost unreal. The royal guard stood perfectly still near the gate. His uniform was neat and polished, every button in place. He had trained for years to stand like this, no matter the weather, noise, or crowd. His face showed no emotion. His eyes stayed forward. Beside him, the horse stood calmly, strong and tall, used to the sounds of people and flashing cameras. The guard knew this duty well. He understood that his role was not just to look impressive, but to protect a tradition that had lasted for generations. Many people did not realize how much discipline it took to remain silent and still for hours. His legs felt the strain, but his mind stayed focused. This was his responsibility, and he took it seriously. The crowd slowly grew bigger. Some people smiled and posed for pictures. Others laughed quietly. Children pointed in wonder. Most people respected the space around the guard, keeping a safe distance just as the signs instructed. The mood was calm and respectful. Among the crowd was a man who did not share that respect. He arrived later than most, pushing his way forward with an impatient look on his face. He glanced at the guard and smirked, as if he saw something amusing rather than honorable. At first, no one paid much attention to him. The man stepped closer than he should have. He leaned in slightly, waving his hand in front of the guard's face. The guard did not react. His eyes stayed forward. His posture did not change. This seemed to surprise the man. He chuckled to himself and said something under his breath, trying to get a response. A few tourists nearby noticed and shifted uncomfortably. They expected the man to step back, but he didn't. Instead, he seemed encouraged by the silence. He took another step forward, ignoring the invisible boundary that everyone else respected. The guard could hear the man clearly. Every word reached him, but he had been trained not to respond unless absolutely necessary. His breathing stayed steady. His hands remained still. Years of discipline guided him through moments like this. The horse sensed the tension. It shifted its weight slightly, ears flicking back for a moment. The guard felt the movement but remained calm. He gently tightened his hold, a quiet signal of control. The horse settled again, trusting the rider completely. The man grew louder. He began making comments meant to mock the guard's silence and stillness. He laughed, clearly enjoying the attention. Some people in the crowd frowned. A woman shook her head. Another tourist whispered that the man should stop. Still, the guard did not move. His silence was not weakness. It was strength, built through endless hours of training. He knew that reacting too soon could turn a small issue into something bigger. The crowd's mood slowly changed. What had once felt exciting now felt tense. Cameras were still raised, but smiles faded. People began to understand that this was no longer harmless curiosity. This was disrespect. The man stepped even closer, now directly in front of the horse. This was dangerous, even if he didn't realize it. Horses were calm but powerful animals. Sudden movements or stress could cause problems. A few tourists quietly stepped back, worried about what might happen next. The guard's focus sharpened. He was aware of every movement, every sound. He was ready to act if needed, but only if the situation crossed a clear line. His training taught him patience first. The man pointed at the guard's uniform and laughed loudly. He tried to block the path in front of the horse, waving his arms as if daring something to happen. The crowd grew silent. Phones continued recording, but now with a different purpose. This was no longer entertainment. This was a test. The horse shifted again, lifting one hoof slightly before placing it back down. The guard felt it immediately. This was a sign. The situation could not continue like this. With calm authority, the guard finally spoke. His voice was firm, controlled, and clear. He issued a simple warning, telling the man to step back and respect the space. There was no anger in his tone, only professionalism. The sound of his voice surprised everyone. The man froze for a moment, clearly not expecting the guard to speak. The crowd held its breath. The guard's words carried weight, not because they were loud, but because they were steady and confident. The man laughed nervously, pretending it was all a joke, but he did not move right away. The guard repeated the warning just as calm as before. The horse stood strong and still, trusting the guard completely. Some people in the crowd finally spoke up. A tourist told the man to leave the guard alone. Another said he was being disrespectful. The man looked around, realizing he no longer had support. The guard stayed focused. He did not argue. He did not threaten. His presence alone showed authority. Years of training, discipline, and duty stood behind him in that moment. The man took a small step back, then another. His confidence faded. The tension slowly eased, though the air still felt heavy. Security personnel nearby had noticed everything. They began moving closer, ready to step in if needed. The guard returned to silence once the man stepped away. His posture returned to stillness. His face showed no sign of what had just happened. To the outside world, it was as if nothing had changed. The crowd slowly relaxed. Some people lowered their phones. Others whispered about what they had just seen. Many felt a new respect for the guard, realizing how much self-control his role required. The horse stood calm again, breathing evenly. The guard gently adjusted his grip, a quiet moment of reassurance. Everything was back under control. This moment, though short, left a strong impression. It showed that strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent, steady, and patient. The guard remained at his post, fulfilling his duty with dignity, while the crowd walked away with a deeper understanding of respect. And this was only the beginning. The man did not leave the area completely. Even after stepping back, he stayed close enough to watch the guard. His face showed annoyance, not shame. He folded his arms and stared as if he had been embarrassed and wanted a way to recover his pride. The crowd noticed this too. People whispered, wondering if he would try again. The guard remained silent. His eyes stayed forward. His body did not move. Inside, he stayed alert. Training had taught him that situations like this could calm down or suddenly grow worse. He listened carefully to the sounds around him, the footsteps, the voices, the breathing of the horse beneath him. The tourists slowly returned to their usual behavior. Some took photos again, but now with more distance and respect. Others kept watching the man, worried he might cause more trouble. Children were gently pulled back by their parents. The mood was not as light as before, but it was stable. The man suddenly laughed loudly, trying to act as if nothing had happened. He spoke to people around him, saying he was just joking and that everyone was too serious. A few people ignored him. Others gave him cold looks. No one laughed with him. Feeling the lack of attention, the man stepped forward again. This time his movements were sharper. He walked closer to the horse, circling slightly as if trying to find a weak point. The horse noticed and shifted, muscles tightening for a moment. The guard felt this through the saddle and gently steadied the reins. The guard's mind stayed calm. He did not rush. He waited. He knew the rules clearly. The man was testing limits again, but the guard would respond only when necessary. The man spoke again, louder than before. He questioned why the guard could not respond normally. He made comments meant to sound clever, but they carried disrespect. Some tourists shook their heads. A woman raised her phone, not for fun now, but to record what was happening. The guard remained silent. Silence was part of his strength. Each second that passed without reaction showed control. The horse stayed steady, trusting the calm signals from the guard. The man took another step forward, now clearly inside the restricted space. This crossed an important line. The guard could not ignore it anymore. With slow control, he turned his head slightly and spoke again. His voice was firm but measured. He told the man clearly to move back and follow the rules. The man stopped, surprised again. He tried to argue, claiming he was allowed to stand where he wanted. His voice rose, drawing more attention. The crowd grew quiet. Everyone understood this was serious now. The guard did not raise his voice. He repeated the instruction, calm and clear. His tone carried authority without anger. This calmness made the moment even more powerful. The horse stood tall and steady, adding to the presence of control. Security personnel were now much closer. They watched carefully, ready to act. One of them made eye contact with the man, a silent warning that his behavior was being monitored. The man looked around and realized many eyes were on him. The attention he wanted now felt heavy. He took a step back but continued talking, trying to save face. His words sounded weaker now. A tourist spoke up, telling the man to stop. Another person agreed. The crowd was no longer silent. They were united in support of the guard. This surprised the man even more. The guard returned to silence once the man stepped back. His posture returned to perfect stillness. To anyone passing by, he looked like a statue again, strong and calm. The man stood there for a few moments, breathing heavily. Then he turned and walked away, muttering to himself. Security followed him at a distance, making sure he left the area. The tension slowly faded. The air felt lighter. People began talking again, but now with a different tone. Many spoke about how impressed they were by the guard's patience. Some explained to their children why respect mattered. The guard stayed at his post. Inside, he allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Situations like this were never easy, but they were part of the duty. He felt proud of his training and grateful for the trust placed in him. The horse relaxed fully now, breathing slow and steady. The guard gently adjusted the reins again, a quiet thank you for the animal's cooperation. Time passed. The sun moved slightly in the sky. More tourists arrived, unaware of what had happened earlier. The guard stood ready just as before, calm and focused. For those who had witnessed the moment, it stayed in their minds. They had seen discipline, patience, and strength without force. They had seen how calm control could handle even the most difficult behavior. And the day continued, carrying with it a quiet lesson that many would not forget. The man did not leave the palace area completely. Even after security guided him away from the main path, he stayed nearby, standing at a distance where he could still watch the guards. His body language showed frustration. He paced slowly, stopping now and then to look back toward the gate. It was clear he felt wronged in his own mind, even though many people had seen his behavior. The royal guard returned fully to his duty. He stood tall and still, eyes forward, posture perfect. From the outside, nothing about him showed stress or emotion. Inside, however, his awareness stayed sharp. He knew that situations sometimes came back in unexpected ways. His training reminded him to stay ready but calm. New tourists arrived, filling the space with fresh voices and footsteps. Many of them had no idea what had happened earlier. They smiled, took pictures, and spoke in excited tones. The area slowly felt normal again, though those who had seen the incident earlier stayed more watchful. The horse stood quietly beneath the guard, steady and patient. The guard gently shifted his weight in a way only trained riders would notice. It was a small movement, meant to stay comfortable without breaking form. The horse responded calmly, showing the deep trust between them. The man suddenly moved again. He walked along the outer edge of the crowd, speaking loudly to anyone who would listen. He claimed the guards were unfair and too strict. Some people ignored him. Others listened briefly, then turned away. No one seemed convinced. The man's voice carried across the open space. The guard heard it but did not turn his head. He stayed focused straight ahead. Responding now would only feed the man's need for attention. A few tourists exchanged looks. One person shook their head. Another quietly told a friend that the man should just leave. The mood was calm but firm. The crowd was no longer passive. They understood what respect looked like now. The man stopped walking and stared directly at the guard again. He took a deep breath as if preparing himself. Then, slowly, he stepped closer to the boundary once more. This time his movements were slower, more careful, as if he was testing how far he could go without being stopped. The guard sensed the change immediately. His focus sharpened. He felt the horse shift slightly beneath him, aware of the man's approach. The guard kept his breathing steady and his hands calm. Panic or anger would only make things worse. The man stopped just short of the line. He spoke again, his tone less mocking but more challenging. He questioned the rules and complained about how strict everything was. His words were loud enough for people nearby to hear. The guard waited. He counted the seconds in his head, measuring the situation. The man had not crossed the line yet. There was no need to act. Patience was still the best response. Security personnel watched closely from the side. They had already identified the man as a problem. One of them spoke quietly into a radio, keeping others informed. Everything was being handled with care. The man leaned forward slightly, pointing toward the guard as he spoke. This movement caught the attention of several tourists. Phones were raised again, not for fun, but to record what might happen next. The guard finally turned his head just enough to face the man. His movement was slow and controlled. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. He reminded the man of the rules and asked him to step back again. There was no threat in his tone, only authority. The man hesitated. He had expected either silence or anger. What he received was calm control. It unsettled him. He looked around, realizing how many people were watching. For a moment it seemed like he might argue again. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He shifted his weight, unsure. The crowd stayed quiet, waiting. A child's voice broke the silence. The child asked their parent why the man was being rude. The simple question carried more weight than any argument. Several adults looked at the man with clear disappointment. The man's shoulders dropped slightly. The fight seemed to drain out of him. He took a step back, then another. His voice grew softer, less confident. He muttered something under his breath, but no one paid attention. Security stepped closer, not rushing, not touching him, just being present. Their calm approach made it clear that the situation was under control. The man finally turned away and walked toward the exit of the area. This time, he did not look back. His steps were quick, as if he wanted to leave before anyone said anything else. A quiet wave of relief moved through the crowd. People exhaled. Some lowered their phones. Others smiled slightly, grateful that things had ended peacefully. The guard returned his gaze forward and resumed full stillness. His posture was once again perfect, as if nothing had happened at all. To those who arrived later, he looked like part of the scenery, strong and silent. The horse relaxed completely now, ears forward, breathing slow. The guard gently adjusted the reins again, a small sign of reassurance and partnership. People began talking softly among themselves. Many expressed respect for the guard's patience. Some said they had never realized how much control the job required. Parents explained to their children the importance of respecting rules and people who serve. Time passed quietly. The sun continued its slow movement across the sky. The palace gates stood tall and unchanged, just as they had for generations. For the guard, this was just another moment in a long career of duty. He did not see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a protector of order and tradition. His strength came not from loud actions, but from calm restraint. And for those who witnessed the scene, the memory stayed with them. They had seen how dignity could stand firm against disrespect, and how calm discipline could guide a difficult moment toward peace. The afternoon moved on quietly after the man finally left the area. The crowd slowly returned to a normal rhythm. New visitors arrived, unaware of what had happened earlier. They smiled, talked, and raised their phones to take pictures. The palace grounds once again felt calm and orderly. The royal guard remained in position. His posture stayed strong and balanced. His face showed no emotion. To anyone watching now, he looked like a symbol carved from stone, steady and timeless. Inside, however, he stayed alert. Experience had taught him that calm moments still required attention. Security staff stayed nearby, blending into the background. They did not draw attention to themselves, but their presence was clear to anyone who understood how these places worked. They watched the crowd carefully, scanning faces and movements. Everything seemed normal. The horse beneath the guard stood quietly. Its breathing was slow and relaxed. The guard could feel the warmth and strength of the animal, a partner he trusted deeply. Over years of service, they had learned to read each other without words. A small shift in weight or a gentle pressure was enough to communicate. People who had seen the earlier incident spoke softly among themselves. Some explained what had happened to those who arrived later. Others simply said they had witnessed something important about discipline and respect. There was no excitement in their voices now, only reflection. A group of schoolchildren arrived with a teacher. They lined up neatly, listening carefully as the teacher spoke about history and tradition. The children looked at the guard with wide eyes. To them, he seemed almost unreal, like a figure from a storybook. One child whispered a question, asking how the guard could stand so still for so long. The teacher smiled and said it took training, patience, and pride in duty. The child nodded slowly, impressed. The guard heard none of this, or perhaps he heard it all without reacting. His focus stayed forward. His role was not to entertain or explain. His role was to represent stability. Time passed. The sun shifted lower in the sky, casting longer shadows across the stone ground. The air cooled slightly, making the uniform more comfortable. The guard welcomed the change, even though he showed no sign of it. A different man approached the edge of the crowd, holding a small flag. He stopped well before the boundary and read the signs carefully. He nodded to himself, then stayed back. This simple act of respect stood out more than any loud gesture ever could. Nearby, an older couple watched quietly. The man leaned toward his partner and spoke softly. He said he had served in uniform years ago and understood how hard it was to stay calm under pressure. The woman squeezed his hand, clearly proud. The guard continued his watch. Inside his mind there was no anger, no replaying of earlier events. He had learned long ago not to carry moments like that with him. Each second of duty stood on its own. Once a situation ended, it ended. Security staff exchanged brief looks and subtle nods. Everything was fine. The area was safe. Their job, like the guards, was often unnoticed when done correctly. The horse lifted its head slightly, ears turning toward a distant sound. The guard felt it and adjusted gently, guiding the horse back into full calm. The movement was so small that most people did not notice it. A breeze moved through the area, carrying quiet sounds of footsteps and distant traffic. Flags shifted softly. The palace stood tall and unchanged, watching over centuries of moments just like this one. Some tourists left, others arrived. The crowd never fully stopped changing. Yet the guard remained constant, a steady point in a moving world. A young man in the crowd lowered his phone and spoke to his friend. He said he had planned to make jokes earlier, but after seeing what respect really looked like, he felt different. His friend nodded, agreeing. Sometimes lessons came without words. The guard's shift continued. His muscles held firm, supported by training and discipline. Pain and discomfort were familiar companions, managed through focus and control. This was not something learned quickly. It took years. As the light changed, another guard in the distance adjusted position during a scheduled change. Everything happened smoothly, quietly, with purpose. Order ruled the space. The earlier incident felt far away now, like a shadow that had passed. What remained was the example left behind. Calm had answered tension. Discipline had answered disrespect. The guard stood on, unmoved. He did not seek praise or recognition. He did not expect thanks. His reward was knowing he had upheld the duty entrusted to him. People continued to watch, some with admiration, some with curiosity. Few truly understood the weight of responsibility carried in silence, but they felt it, even if they could not explain it. The horse shifted its stance slightly, settling deeper into comfort. The guard adjusted just enough to match the movement. Together, they formed a single, steady presence. As the afternoon slowly approached evening, the palace grounds held their quiet dignity. The moment that had once threatened to disturb the peace had instead strengthened it. And so the guard remained, standing watch as he always did. Calm, patient, unshaken, ready for whatever the next moment might bring. The evening slowly settled over the palace grounds. The light softened, turning warm and golden as the sun moved lower in the sky. Shadows stretched across the stone paths and the air became cooler and calmer. The busy energy of the day faded, replaced by a quieter rhythm. The royal guard remained at his post, just as steady as he had been since morning. His posture did not change. His focus stayed sharp. Even after a long day, his discipline did not weaken. This was the final part of his duty for the day, and he intended to finish it with the same care he had shown from the start. The crowd grew smaller as time passed. Families began to leave. Tour groups moved on to other places. The loud chatter and excitement slowly turned into soft conversations and footsteps. Those who stayed were quieter, more thoughtful. Some people lingered longer than planned. They stood at a respectful distance, watching the guard with new understanding. Earlier events had left an impression on them. They had seen patience in action. They had seen how calm strength could handle difficulty without force. A man stood near the edge of the crowd, holding his phone but not recording. He simply watched. Earlier, he had laughed and joked like many others. Now, his expression was serious. He thought about how easy it was to forget that real people stood behind the uniforms. People with training, responsibility, and pressure. The horse beneath the guard stood calmly, its strength quiet and controlled. It had remained steady through the entire day. The guard felt a deep sense of trust in the animal. They had worked together for a long time, learning each other's movements and moods. This partnership made the duty possible. The guard took slow, steady breaths. He felt the tiredness in his body but welcomed it. It meant he had done his job fully. Fatigue was a sign of effort, not weakness. His mind remained clear, focused only on the present moment. Nearby, security staff prepared quietly for the evening routine. Their movements were subtle and organized. They spoke in low voices, sharing brief updates. Everything was calm. The area was safe. The day had ended without harm. A woman walked past with her young son. The boy looked at the guard and asked his mother why the guard did not move or smile. The woman thought for a moment, then said that sometimes the strongest people show strength by staying calm and doing their duty. The boy nodded slowly, thinking about her words. The guard did not hear this, or perhaps he did in a distant way. He did not react. But moments like this were part of why he served, not for attention but for the example set quietly. As the sky darkened, the palace lights began to glow. The buildings looked even more impressive under the evening light. Flags moved gently in the breeze. The atmosphere felt peaceful and respectful. The memory of the earlier disturbance felt far away now. What remained was the lesson it had left behind. People had seen that rules existed for a reason. They had seen that respect mattered, even in small actions. The guard's shift was nearly complete. He waited patiently for the signal that would mark the change. His muscles stayed firm. His balance stayed strong. He did not rush the moment. Everything had its time. Another guard approached in the distance, walking with purpose and calm. The transition was done smoothly, just as training demanded. There was no rush, no noise, no display, only quiet professionalism. As the duty passed on, the guard finally allowed himself to relax. His posture softened slightly as he stepped away from the position. This change was subtle, but it marked the end of long hours of stillness. He guided the horse gently, offering calm reassurance. The horse responded immediately, trusting the familiar touch. Together, they moved away from the public eye. Behind them, the palace grounds continued their evening calm. Visitors left with stories to tell. Some would talk about history. Others would talk about the moment they witnessed patience under pressure. For many, the memory stayed strong. They remembered how one person's behavior tested boundaries and how calm discipline restored balance. They remembered that strength did not always come with loud words or forceful actions. The guard walked on quietly, blending back into the routine of service. He did not think of himself as special. He did not think of the crowd or the cameras. He thought only of doing his job well. In a world filled with noise and rush, his calm stood out. It reminded people that order, respect, and patience still mattered. The day ended as it had begun, with duty fulfilled. And though most would forget the details with time, the feeling remained. A quiet respect, a silent lesson, a reminder that calm strength can guide even difficult moments toward peace.